We now return to what is probably going to be the most difficult performance this entire Let's Play. I've known that woman for years. She'd never be an accomplice. This is weird. Why are we doing this with number 6 first? She'd never be an accomplice to anything. It's utter nonsense to think those two would have ever been conniving with one another. Oh dear, this is most troubling. But surely the waxwork, the man's stone, is nothing to do with the coroner, is it? I have my own problems with members of the police. I do not trust them much. I see no rigorous proof that this waxwork was ever inside the birdcage. It's conjecture. Accusing someone without the right evidence is this is the wrong place where you're from, lad. You're more like this, Mr. Frodo, with your potatoes and your combine harvesters, and accusing someone without the right evidence. He's not a proper job, is he? I won't have it. This is fucking murder right now, is what this is.
Somewhat unsurprisingly, it seems the introduction of this waxwork model to the proceedings has polarized opinion.
Given that this face is obscured and its build is in no way resembles that of the victim, I can only applaud my learned friend's temerity at suggesting it has Mr. Asman's body double. Take the mask off! Yes, the applause is deafening, and yes, I know it seems extraordinary. But that's the point. That's why I have a strong feeling it's actually a greater clue than anyone yet realizes. This is going to be a horrible episode. What are you thinking, Mr. Naruhodo? I'm thinking I shouldn't have recorded. I can't explain why at the moment, but I feel as though there's a specific reason why it was used. Why it had to be this model. Really? A reason why nothing else would do, you mean? Take the mask off and it's going to be a face of Mr. Asman. Yes, and I'm convinced it's something far more significant than whether or not the model looked like the victim. Oh, really? Well, if that's the case, the glass shard in its pocket, for one, yeah? We must prevent the trial from ending prematurely at all costs. Yes, agreed. I have to find a way out of this.
If you are ready, counsel, you may proceed with the summation examination.
Yes, my lord. God damn it. I've known the woman for years.
Hold it!
The order of things seems to have changed around here for some reason. I'm a couple, lad. It's a couple's discretion to bend the rules sometimes, when needs must. What's wrong with that? Where do I start? I've been working at the yard for 40-odd years. That's even more than I thought. We've only had a Metropolitan Police Service in town for 70 years, you know. Of course, times have changed. The public didn't trust coppers back when I started. It was rough. We had to fight crime, and we had to fight to win the public's trust as well, and when we did. Forensic science was in its infancy too, even more than it is now, and she spearheaded the revolution. Dr. Scythe, you mean? That's right, about 10 years ago now it was, when I was still a youngish bobby on the beat. That's when... Really... What's the time frame here? Because she doesn't look all that old. That's when she started making a name for herself as a top-class coroner. And now look at her, head of the forensic investigation team, and a woman no less. Hell, you won't hear me complain. It's all what we all dreamt of back then, I tell you. Could you tell me without holding that gun in the air? We were out, all out to uphold justice, lad. Full of vim we were, full of vim. It's coming across loud and clear. It's utter nonsense to think that two would ever be conniving with one another. But we're only just starting to understand this case. What are you reading there, sir? The man behind those murders on Surrey Pond Street was caught in 2 days flat. That's real policing for you. That's really not relevant to this case, is it? You're wrong there. Because it was Dr. Scythe in charge of examining the bodies. And it was evidence arising from her work that led to the arrest of the scoundrel responsible. Oh, That's right. Oh, that woman is the forefront of this country's fight against crime. The idea that she's somehow involved in this murky business is a load of old tosh. I thought it was up to me to press the jurors, not the other way around. Oh dear, this is most troubling, but surely the waxwork the man stole is not a murder. Why would you assume that? Well, quite simply because the unsettling swindler has no relationship with the woman, does he? True, as it stands we don't know any connection. Oh gosh, but it would be delightfully romantic if they were somehow to have a mutual interest in the waxwork. Romantic? A woman of society such as myself views everything in terms of relationships, you know. Well, you learn something new every day, even if you don't want to. Oh, one might wonder about a possible relationship between the defendant and this coroner woman. Or perhaps between the defendant and the handsome prosecutor just there. This woman may be more astute than I've been giving her credit for. If that's the woman's stance, then perhaps demonstrating some connection between the waxwork and Dr. Scythe would be enough. Yes, I agree. As soon as we have even a whiff of a connection, she'll be the first to know. So, she's one I have to pity. I have had my own problems with members of the police. I do not trust them much. Wait, whoa, no, shit. Go back. I have to press, not continue on, thank you. What sort of problems? Let's just say we have run into each other on numerous occasions while I've been performing on the street. Right, I see. Obviously, artists such as myself cannot appear on stage as we work in close proximity to our audiences, so we perform our great magic in parks, on street corners, and the like. But the police use any excuse to make our lives difficult.
Excuse me.
Do you have something to say in response to that, Mr. Ottermole?
Who are you calling a mass murderer? I've already forgotten your goddamn voice.
Sorry, my mistake. I got confused because I heard you looked like him.
I don't look anything like the man. You want to be locked up, Sonny?
Thanks, Mr. Sholmes. Perhaps we could move on. I was really wondering if you had something you wanted to add in response to what juror number 3 just said. And clearly you do.
Back in my day, back in the good old days, it wasn't like this.
What was it like, sir?
We worked our fingers to the bone to earn the public's trust, we did. And by Jove, we earned it. People respected us back then.
Respected you?
No one would have called a coroner into question in them days. A coroner's report was the hallmark of an investigation done right. Especially when Dr. Courtney Stevens put her name to it. She was the best of the best, and it happened to...
Hold on a minute. What are you talking about? Who's Courtney Stevens?
Sorry, I got a bit carried away there.
Stevens is Dr. Scythe's maiden name. Her maiden name. So that was before she was married.
Of course, yes. Silly me. It's Scythe now, isn't it?
Stevens. I'm sure I've seen that name somewhere recently. Well, yeah. The Autopsy Report. I guess I just I looked at the Stevens and the Scythe and already kind of came to that conclusion myself. I wasn't thinking about them having the different names.
Anyway, the point is, those were the great days of policing, and not like now.
Sorry to interrupt, sir. But do you think you could change your statement to include that name?
Well, yes, I don't see why not. She was Courtney Stevens back when I knew her. Of course, a legendary coroner now, even then.
Do we have to press on this again? She was legendary, was she?
What did you say? That woman is still the best coroner in the land. Head of forensic investigation team.
Legendary was your description, sir, not mine.
Rubbish. That word never passed my lips.
No, I'd never describe anybody that way, ever. Not if they were still in the game. I think the point you're trying to make is that Dr. Scythe is an extremely talented coroner. Would that be fair?
It would. If it weren't for the fact that you're trying to drag that legendary woman's reputation through the mud.
I'm gonna pretend I didn't hear that legendary. Alright, it's uttered on the...
No rigorous proof that the waxwork was ever inside the bird cage.
But you claim the whole instantaneous kinesis demonstration was a trick.
That I did. But there's more than one way to pull a rabbit out of a hat, isn't there?
Sorry?
I'll grant you, given that this cage appeared from amidst an explosion, there'd have been no need to use a real person. But if a waxwork had been used, the culprit could have at least have had the decency to make it look like the victim.
I don't know why I'm giving you this kind of accent when that's not really appropriate, is it? I'm not sure exactly how much criminals are governed by decency.
The point is, if you're going to make a claim about that waxwork being inside the birdcage, you'll need to give us some evidence. Without that, it's just not science.
I suppose we should expect nothing less than a logical argument from a fellow of the Royal Society. But that perhaps means his mind could be changed if we manage to present suitable evidence? Evidence that the Professor Waxwork was inside that birdcage. Can I produce that or not? I mean, if we open the thing... Well, wait a minute though. That found in the folds of the professor's... What's it? Actually, I have something I'd like you to see, sir.
Oh? I must warn you that I firmly believe it's only wise to trust men in white coats. So, given your jet black outfit, I don't mind admitting to a sense of trepidation here.
So you don't trust anyone in black? Looking in the mirror must be very trying. I do have some evidence that proves the waxwork was inside that birdcage, namely...
Take that! What's that? A piece of glass? It's unusually thick for glass.
Yes, it's a piece of broken glass that we found inside the jacket on the waxwork. As you say, it's not ordinary glass, though. It's very thick and clearly made for extra strength, much like the special glass that was developed for the construction of the Crystal Tower.
The Crystal Tower? Holy smoke!
Exactly. The centerpiece of the Great Exhibition, where the very incident we're talking about took place. On the day in question, the birdcage fell from above and smashed through a window of that special glass.
From whence this small piece originated, is that it?
Precisely. So, what do you say? Now that clear evidence in support of the assertion has been placed before you.
Well, as I said, I only trust men in white coats as a rule. However, with the reasoning as sound, it's fair to say colour shouldn't come into it. In light of what you've shown here, yes, I feel obliged to change my position on the matter.
In that case, juror number 4, will you amend your statement now, please?
The presence of that piece of glass leaves me in little doubt if the waxwork was indeed inside that birdcage.
Thank you for reconsidering your position, sir.
Your words are misplaced, boy. My opinion is governed by logic and science and nothing else. Yes, science is where you should direct your words of gratitude.
Thanks, science.
What's the matter with you? Too good to say some words of thanks to the mother of all academic subjects.
What is it about scientists, honestly?
Accusing someone without more evidences.
Hold it!
Oh my harvesters, I've got to get myself back into it all the time because I don't do that one. I ask, why have you brought that cord into court with you? Colonel Cobb, he's been growing back in the farm. Fuck, what is that accent? Picked him off my combine harvester on my way into town. He's a proper nibbler, he is. Yes, the nibbling seems to be taking quite a while. Maybe it could wait until after the trial? Oh, I don't like the sound of that, Mr. Photo. You need colonels at times like these. Whenever I've something big to decide, the colonels always point me in the right direction, see? You're talking about your cob of corn? Nibble... what? The fuck? Nibble, I'll be no guilty ball. Nibble will not be guilty out. What the fuck is they say? Perhaps akin to fortune telling with flower petals like people do back home? So Professor Hairbrain's fate is to be decided by a cob of corn? Could you not at least wait until we've had more time to find the truth before deciding on the defendant's guilt? Oh, I don't know about that, Mr. Photo. Me tum's awfully full already. Amazing. I know it seems a little far-fetched to think the waxwork model of the professor was in that birdcage, but on the other hand, it explains a lot. There really is a reason why that particular waxwork had to be used as Mr. Asmund's double. We must do everything we can to make the jurors understand it. The truth is, I'm sure that's the key to this, but it's the most puzzling part of it, too. In that case, you should see what additional information you can glean whilst trying to change the jurors' minds. If you can read a book whilst eating a rice cracker, Mr. Naruhodo, I'm sure you can do this. Right, yes. What? What? Well, I mean, so we can suggest now that it was her, right? This is very weird because they're not. Usually, you kind of get a hint about who's going to be opposed to who, but now we do have evidence that they're one and the same. So I guess.
Objection.
Those two statements clearly contradict each other.
Good gracious. To whose statements do you refer, counsel?
So, juror number 2. Oh gosh, me. What can I do for you? I presume that you heard what juror number 6 said in his statement. It's brought to light the maiden name of the coroner, Dr. Scythe, which in turn has revealed a connection that wasn't apparent before. Well, naturally, as a woman of society, I find such connections and relationships irresistible. But, oh golly, I'm afraid I fail to see what you mean. Dr. Scythe's maiden name is Stevens, and through that name, the coroner is very definitely linked to the waxwork of the killer. The defense has evidence to prove it. My goodness, evidence, you say? How utterly enthralling.
Counsel, the court cannot overlook that last remark. I very much hope there is substance to your claim.
Of course, my lord. I would ask the court to look at this. The evidence that clearly links Dr. Scythe to the mass murderer known as the Professor.
Take that!
I have here a certain autopsy report from 10 years ago.
A 10-year-old autopsy report? What relevance does that have?
It is, of course, from the autopsy of the person portrayed in the waxwork, the killer known as the Professor.
The professor's... But the man was a capital offender, so...
That's right. This is the certification of death that was drawn up after the convict's execution. The identity of the killer was never made public, so the report gives few details, but what's important is the name of the coroner who wrote it. Courtney Stevens. Oh my, Courtney Stevens. Strike a light, what? It appears that the professor's autopsy was conducted by Dr. Scythe 10 years ago, and a few days ago, Mr. Drebber very deliberately stole the waxwork of the professor from Madame Tuspel's. A waxwork that doesn't in fact resemble the victim, Mr. Asman, at all. On the surface. And do you suppose there's some unsavory relationship between those events? Absolutely. I'm sure of it. There's no doubt in my mind the professor case, maybe they swapped heads instead, and there's not actually something inside the mask? Is at the heart of a link that we have yet to uncover between Dr. Courtney Scythe and Mr. Enoch Drebber. Hidden links, mysterious connections, secret relationships. This is all most extraordinary. We are surely obliged now to explore this further. Okay, but why didn't number 4 change? Quite right. We can't let this trial come to an end now. Not while there's this cloud of suspicion hanging over the yard's best coroner. It wasn't like this in my day, but we're still here to uphold justice in the end. The scientist guy. It's the professor. That's what links that frightful swindler and the coroner. Okay, I can't press that any further. I have my own problems with members of the police. Okay.
The prisons of that class.
Prisons of that class.
Okay, but... Okay, so there's the evidence then.
Objection!
Those two statements clearly contradict each other.
Good gracious, to whose statements do you refer?
If you could put down your corn for a moment, juror number 5. Oh, you mean me? You pointed out that it's wrong to make an accusation without evidence, but the accusation that the waxwork model was inside the second birdcage on the day in question is not without supporting evidence, as the defense demonstrated to the juror sitting beside you. Oh, is that right? God, I fucking hate this accent. Gotta practice that one a lot better. Would it be fair to say you didn't follow the argument? I don't much understand besides Colonel Cobb, to be honest. Of course you don't.
If I could interject here.
I hate the voices I have chosen for all 6 of these characters. Please do, sir.
Now that this assertion of yours about the waxwork has been backed up by some solid evidence, it would be wrong of me as a man of science not to pursue the matter further.
It's really fucking hard, though, when they give you, like, 2 dozen, 3 dozen people for cast members in the entire game series. Or will me too, then? Should have given him a pirate voice is what I should have. Sorry? If this brainy gentleman here says he's right, then he must be. See, I wouldn't dream of going against Colonel Cobb or anyone who's got stuff in between his ears. Success. If you can call it that.
Thank you, counsel, that will do. The result of the summation examination, the jury's overall leaning has changed. 2 jurors now call guilty against 4 who call not guilty. Accordingly, the court has failed to reach a consensus at the time. Then the trial must continue.
We did it. Well done, Mr. Naruhodo. Another wonderful victory. I would like to point out that we still have, what, two chapters left in the game after this? Undoubtedly with more characters.
The waxwork of the despicable professor, used as a body double for the victims in this quite extraordinary case. I must say, it's extremely hard to believe the assertion could possibly be true. However, it would appear that it does at least warrant further investigation.
If the waxwork of the professor that links Mr. Drebber and Dr. Scythe, it's... God damn it, Dr. Scythe. And I'm convinced that there's a special significance to that link.
I don't know what you're hoping to prove, lad. I really don't. I really don't.
The truth, sir, by using evidence and testimony. Difficult is to delve deeper into the alleged involvement of waxwork in this case. And the prosecution calls for the owner of the model to be summoned as a witness.
The owner?
Madame Tuspels. I really thought that Lord Van Zieks would object to this whole line of inquiry.
Very well, I concur. Make arrangements for Madame Tuspels to appear as a witness with immediate effect.
Listen carefully, my learned friend. Oh, yes? You should know that you are on the brink of opening Pandora's box.
The court shall now adjourn for 45 minutes. During that time, the prosecution will summon the new witness and prepare her for taking the stand.
Madame Tuspels, yes. I shall see to it at once, my lord. To be continued. Continue already. Alright. Well, this is a good breaking point, but honestly, if I don't stick to the hour-long episodes, we're never getting this game done, so... Let's continue. Ah, the knight-errant himself. Oh, have you been watching from the gallery, Mr. Sholmes? No, I've been sitting out here on the couch, of course. I've been on the edge of my seat the entire time. Courtroom trials are fascinating affairs, as a spectator, at least. I'm glad you've been enjoying yourself. I have to ask, what on earth is going on? It makes no sense. What's this professor business all about? He doesn't look like any professor I've ever met before. Who even is he? Of course. You were in Germany already 10 years ago. Yes, the professor. When I discovered he was the one who had been abducted, a sense of foreboding stirred within me. But who knew the monster would come knocking at your door? My heartfelt sympathies. As it turns out, Lord Van Zieks is even more intimately tied to this case than any of us realized, isn't he? Yes, how true. His great friend from university in the dock. And now a waxwork of the killer who took his esteemed brother's life makes an appearance too. I imagine even the shrewd Mr. Reaper failed to foresee that kick in the teeth. An extraordinary move on your part, my dear fellow, to throw that in front of the man. Make it sound deliberate. I can't help feeling that this professor case is really very puzzling. Oh yes? In what particular manner? Well, there's Mr. Drebber, Dr. Scythe, and Lord Van Zieks. It seems everybody in the trial has a link to the case somehow. Yes. In fact, I alone am not a member of the set. Well, though that leaves me as an empty set, all alone and with no intersection to any other. Excuse me? Please go on. Oh, it's you and whatever generic female voice I give to all the females in this game. Dr. Scythe? Ah, Dr. Courtney Scythe, nay Stevens. Good day to you. Hello, Sholmes. That was very shrewd of you. What in particular, pray? You requested that 10-year autopsy report from Gregson, didn't you? Why would you assume such a thing? Because Gregson told me. To think it's been 10 years. 10 years in the laboratory. The laboratory. Wielding my scalpel. I smell of nothing but corpses and disinfectant. The policeman on the jury had a lot to say about you as it happens, Dr. Scythe. I've accused you of being complicit in what happened. I'm hoping that you'll take the stand and tell the truth about what really happened. Why else do you think I'm here, you idiot? That certainly won't be possible. Lord Van Zeeks won't be summoning me as a witness. Lord Strongheart has forbidden it. Lord Strongheart? The Pandora's box you were warned about is the Professor case. But please don't make the mistake of thinking you'll get any information about it out of me. But attempting to hide from the truth, that's cowardice. I've always fought crime in the way that I see fit. I have no regrets, none at all. And that's all I came here to say. So, good day to you. I mean, is the defense not capable of calling witnesses? Is that not allowed? Or... She mentioned it too, this Pandora's box. Whatever does it all mean? There's really no cause for concern, I assure you, when the trial resumes. The meaning will become all too apparent, whether you like it or not. Huh? Now then, I believe it's almost time. I must make my way back to the public gallery. The edge of my seat awaits. I think maybe you're enjoying yourself a little too much. Ah yes, one word of warning before I go. If, in the course of the trial this afternoon, you perceive even a shadow of doubt about the truth, don't let it out of your sight. Pursue it like a dog with a bone. To the bitter end, you understand. Do not falter, whatever may come to pass. All right, I understand. Thank you. Good. I shall make myself scarce then. I purchased a bar of caramel earlier, so I shall be gnawing on that if you gnaw away at the truth, as you gnaw away at the truth. It's Sholmes caramel, too. What did that warning from Mr. Sholmes really mean, I wonder? Especially the bit about whatever may come to pass. It's time for the final chapter, then. I'm determined to find the truth, no matter what.
In the name of Her Majesty the Queen, I hereby reconvene the proceedings of this court. Counsels for the defense and prosecution, are you ready and able to continue?
The prosecution is ready, my lord. Yes, my lord, as long as we don't have to talk to the jurors again. The defense is also ready.
As the court is aware, the case under our scrutiny began with a damaging incident at the Great Exhibition. Yet we now find ourselves embroiled in the details of a convicted felon who was sent to the gallows a decade ago. This trial has certainly defied all expectation.
This seems to be the fate of all trials in which this Nipponese is involved, my lord.
So then, let us begin our exploration of the defense's assertion that the waxwork was cardinally involved in this matter. Lord Van Zeeks.
My lord.
Are we still awaiting the arrival of Madame Tuspels?
Not at all. She is in the antechamber as we speak, and ready to be summoned.
Very well. Bring in the witness.
At once, my lord. Bailiff, show Madame Tuspels to the stand. Things are about to become a lot more intense. If Drebber is responsible, as I'm sure he is, it means he must have had an accomplice in Dr. Scythe. And what connects the pair of them is the waxwork. Yes, the model of the professor. That's the key to the link between these otherwise unrelated individuals. It's a tenuous link, admittedly, but at present it's all we have to go on. State your name and occupation for the court, please. My name is Madame Esmeralda Tuspels. I'm a waxwork artisan, and the proprietress of the Madame Tuspels Museum of Waxwork.
You will have to pardon me for working as I testify. My new exhibit must open very soon. Oh, so he finally gets a statue, does he? Now there are 2 of them in the world. Oh my, what expression is she carving into that face? A number of days ago, a particular waxwork model was stolen from your museum. Your museum, yes. Can you confirm this? Oui, that is true. At first, we believed it had been kidnapped. A waxwork model kidnapped? Yes, my lord. There was a demand for ransom money left behind by the culprit. However, according to what I have just been told outside the courtroom, that was not the true reason. Told by whom? I understand it was utilized as a substitute for the body of a murder victim. At present, that is no more than conjecture proposed by the defense. This is the victim of the case in question, Mr. Odi Asman. Well, of course, I know him well. He is a part of my odious personages exhibit. I detest to say what is evident, but Mr. Asman does not resemble the professor at all.
He's got a freaking mask on, people! God damn you and your anime logic.
Yes, but perhaps their faces are very similar. Are you suggesting that we should see now the demasked visage of the professor?
Yes!
I have here the key, but it is strictly forbidden to open the lock.
Why? This is absurd.
Pardon?
I don't know what face you've carved onto your fancy figure beneath that mask. Why are you talking with the visage right now? But clearly it won't be that of the actual killer.
Indeed. The man's identity was never made public after all.
The trial took place in a closed court. The proceedings were strictly confidential. The condemned man was summarily executed. His identity remains a closely guarded national secret. There is no possible way that a repository of tawdry exhibits could get its hands on that information.
What? It would seem you are unaware of the Tuspel's principles.
They dug him up.
What principles? The family Tuspels has always prided itself on sculpting its models on a perfection.
Perfezione. Now we're going back to the Mario.
Every detail, including the visage, is fashioned with complete fidelity. Voila, our principles.
Jesus Christ, this is... Can we end this and never talk to these people ever again?
There is a well-known legend about the Tuspels waxworks from the time of the French Revolution. A member of the Tuspels family, oh yes, the guillotine thing, is said to have made a waxwork of the queen who was executed. Oui, that is true. It was a century ago now.
I believe the queen's face was carved in the minutes following her death, actually at the guillotine site.
You are correct. The model is on display still today in the House of Horrors. We Tuspels will stop at nothing to obtain a faithful replica of our subjects. Dear me, it's a somewhat disturbing tenacity of purpose. It is the only way to obtain a truly lifelike representation of the subject. And it has been my family's secret for generations.
Do you mean to say that beneath that mask?
Oui, the true visage of the killer is there.
Oh boy, this is ludicrous. It's out of the question.
The professor spread terror throughout Great Britain. As a result, the Madame Tuspel's special exhibit remains extremely popular even today. The killer, emerging from his own grave, it is a sight to behold. You should come. I think, madam, it would be beneficial to hear your formal testimony on this matter.
Just open the fucking mask!
You will explain every detail of this macabre model and your personal involvement in its creation. With pleasure.
You can seriously save like half an hour just by opening the damn mask right now.
The special exhibit in the House of Horrors is based on a rumor that shocked society in London. An impression of the visage was taken directly from the corpse, in accordance with the Tuspel's family principles. I enlisted the aid of the gravedigger and created a mound for the head of the cemetery just before the interment. I hid myself until it gave me a signal. I was there for a very long time that night. as dawn approached, I was very worried that I could be discovered. The gravedigger, the man sanctioned this. I will do all that is necessary to achieve the true resemblance my family is celebrated for. And nobody else knew, only the gravedigger. What harm did he do you?
So, you truly saw it. The face of that monster.
Naturellement, I was aware of the time that his identity was a secret. But the spells would not be the spells if we did not insist on absolute fidelity to our sculptures.
I don't believe this.
I myself have seen the special exhibit at your museum, madam. A truly blood-curdling scene in which the murderer is emerging from his own grave. The scene it depicts was the subject of many rumors in London 10 years ago. I have here a newspaper from the time. The special exhibit was based upon the picture in this article. It was the most detailed account of what happened, as reported by the eyewitness who saw it.
The 10-year-old article has been entered in the court record. We better look at that immediately. Man rises from the grave. It's too absurd for words. Let me have a look. Let me have a look. Charles Darwin received Copley Medal. Mad Sheep Rampage and the Great Stink. Parliament is to finally address the foul issue. Horrifying stench on the breeze. Was the Valmask to blame for the Great Blaze? Okay, fun stuff. What exactly are we looking at here? I mean, obviously I'm going to need this at some point, yeah? So... okay, well... I guess we'll find out. The public enjoy absurdity, monsieur. That is why I reproduced... Fuck me. The scene as carefully as possible in my museum. And it's a waxwork from the exhibit that was stolen some days before the incident at the Great Exhibition, wasn't it? That was a question. There should have been a question mark at the end of there. That is correct. The professor you see before you here.
Most puzzling. Counsel for the defense, proceed with the cross-examination.
This waxwork links Drebber to Dr. Scythe, and there has to be some reason for that, which hasn't yet come to light.
Then the mask, and it might find that one out.
But I'll find it. I'll get to the bottom of what really happened. I'll prove that Dr. Scythe and Drebber were in on this crime together. The special exhibit in the House of Horror, based on a rumor that shocked society. And that rumor would be a 10-year-old tale now, but one that no Londoner would ever forget. Oh, fuck, why do you gotta weigh in?
Right, I know just what you're talking about, I think.
Of course. All of you have got to wait, you sons of bitches. Of course, it couldn't be anything else. Yes, that story will never disappear. Now you're not even whatever. The tale of the condemned killer rising from the dead, that is the central attraction of my House of Horrors. The rumor was whispered all over the city, and it was like this. It was in Lowgate Cemetery, behind the prison, in the dead of night after the execution of the killer. The interred professor slid back the stone slab covering the tomb and emerged from his grave. A young man who witnessed... Who's the young man, did we determine? It's the what's-his-face, engineer, right? Because of the eye thing, yeah? A young man who witnessed this felt a scream welling up inside him. But an instant later, he heard an ear-splitting gunshot from over his shoulder. The bullet struck the emerging corpse, and he fell motionless once more. The scream finally found its way from the mouth of the young witness, who turned and ran for his life. We know the witness was what's-his-face, who is now tied to all of them. He's tied to all of them. The corpse climbed out of his own grave? And then somebody shot him? Who? Who was it? Nobody knows, even today. But remember, it was just a rumor. Perhaps nothing more than a ghost story. The good people of London, they love stories like this. That is why it was in every newspaper across the capital. But was it just a story? I mean, this is exactly the scene that can be seen today at your museum, isn't it? Oh, yeah, the special exhibit was modeled on that very illustration. For a while afterwards, the content of that article were reproduced in every newspaper imaginable. Madam, might I say something? If you have to, Susato, we're already doing a dozen voices and juggling that and trying to remember them all at the same time, and it's really hard to switch from one to the other, but why not? Please go ahead, mademoiselle. When something is described as a rumor, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's entirely made up. I believe that often rumors contain elements of the truth. Yeah, I see that people from the East can be just as astute as the people of Europe. Can we be sure, for instance, that the professor's execution was successful? Or that the body wasn't switched already? It is not possible for the dead to come back to life. Sorry? 10 years ago I was there in Lowgate Cemetery, and after the criminal known as the Professor was killed by hanging, I took a wax impression of his visage from the corpse just before it was interred. Seriously, can we just open the mask? You said, this is the guy's face. I know it. It's right here. We don't... So I can assure you, the man was dead. I see.
It would certainly appear that the condemned man suffered the intended fate.
An impression. The visage was directly... Okay. Is that true of every waxwork in your museum, man? It is, assuming the subject is dead, of course. Live subjects have to cooperate in a similar way. I have letters from imprisoned criminals all the time, you know. What sort of letters? When my time comes, please make a waxwork of me. I mean, do we? No. My museum is famous, monsieur. To be made into a waxwork is an honor, and for some criminals, a symbol of status even. Because nothing says hardened criminal better than wax. And it is thanks to one killer in particular that my museum has gained such popularity in London. Right. I refer to the star of the special exhibit, of course. The professor. Where's Sholmes jumping from the gallery? Objection! Whose form you claim to have captured by taking an impression from the actual corpse. There are no exceptions to the principles of two spells. I enlisted the gravedigger. Who's the gravedigger?
Hold it!
I'm not really sure that's even relevant, to be honest with you. Surely that's illegal, isn't it? It would seem the proprietress of this repository of novelties was blinded by monetary greed. It had nothing to do with money. The man is part of London's criminal history. That is why I had to sculpt him, to record this history. It is the raison d'être. I hate trying to read French, by the way. It needs to be transliterated, so that it actually... I mean, to say that of everything. English by itself is just a very difficult language, and then when you put other languages that don't sound anything like it with the fucking letter... the Two Spells Museum. But if the man was convicted in a closed court and sent for immediate execution, then surely nobody but the members of the judiciary present know the killer's true identity. I assure you, behind that mask is hidden the true face of the professor. Do you realize what you're saying? The professor's identity is a national secret. I understand. And now that the truth about the special exhibit has been revealed, it must perhaps close. Of course it will. As will your entire museum if you don't tread very carefully, madam.
That's going to be another interesting chapter in the history of my family, I think, don't you? So 10 years ago, on the night of the professor's execution, you took a wax impression of his face from the corpse. How many times do we have to go over this? I hid myself until giving the signal. Very long time.
Hold it!
You were there longer than you expected to be. I had some difficulties in capturing the subject's form correctly. As I removed the mask, the mouth of the cadaver fell open. I had some problems with the chin. Dare I ask? The man had been dead for a short while already, you see. And the muscles were relaxing in My understanding of rigor mortis is not that. It is the opposite of that. His muscles were relaxing, and consequently his chin would not align itself correctly. Oh dear, what a horrible thought. Under normal circumstances, I would have an assistant with me. However, that night, I was alone, and except for the gravedigger, and as a consequence, I missed my preferred window of time. Shortly after death. What do you mean? I take the impression of the visage of the cadaver. I always wait until 3 hours after the death. Why 3 hours? Is that amount of time significant? It is because of rigor mortis, okay. Wriggly mortis? It's the name given to a phenomenon that occurs in recently deceased bodies. As a rule, 3 hours post-death, the muscles in the body begin to stiffen. By approximately 10 hours post-death, the entire body is completely rigid and inflexible, so this was considerably longer then. They put him in the ground way after... Okay. Okay. I'm trying to establish the timeline in my head here, and it's kind of vague, so I thought she dug him up immediately, you know, like that night he was put in the ground, and then she dug him up, and okay. Yeah. And then, from that point on, the muscles slowly start to revert to their relaxed state. The effect is often used to estimate the time of death when a body is discovered. Well, that was an education, if a slightly scary one. As Mademoiselle says, rigor mortis commences 3 hours after death, and it starts in the jaw. I see. So that's why you wait. Before that time, the mouth falls open, and it is very difficult to do my work. It's getting hard for me to do my work with all this talk of corpses. I wonder about that information. Quartz just heard from Madame Tuspel's. Okay, I guess it's significant. The information about rigor mortis that you just shared with us, would you mind including it in your formal testimony? I believe it could be significant, you see. Of course, I do not mind at all. I can't help feeling that after this latest topic, the atmosphere in the courtroom has become extremely grave. There's no time for jokes, Mr. Sato.
Madame, kindly amend your testimony as discussed.
Yeah. A very long time before the onset of rigor mortis. We gotta press on that one now. Rigor mortis being the phenomenon you described whereby the corpses become stiff after death. Yes. Glad you were listening. I think you said that it starts at the jaw about 3 hours post-death. Is that right?
Of course, the exact duration depends on little on the season.
I didn't realize a waxwork artisan would be so well versed in the subject.
Oh, no, that's only elementary knowledge in the field of legal medicine.
Well, I had no idea about it, but maybe I won't admit to my ignorance about forensic science. I could ask my father to give you a very simple primer if you like. I think corpses should be your domain. I'm not good with them. Oh dear, I'll do my very best.
As dawn approached, I was very worried about my being discovered. Okay.
You say the dawn approaching. Was the time of day then, approximately?
Well, I could not say. And when I left the cemetery with my utensils and wax, the morning light was becoming visible.
The execution took place on the 17th of June, which had the earliest sunrise of that year. Okay.
Indeed it did. First light would have been around 4:40 in the morning. I remember it well, just like it was yesterday.
Why the fuck would you know that? It really is early. The fact is, I had very little time, so I finished my work in a half hour. Okay, it was necessary to complete the impression and bury the body before daybreak, of course. If somebody had discovered me there, it would have been a catastrophe, so I had to hurry. Is it me, or does Mr. Sholmes seem to be taking shape more quickly now, too?
You certainly appear to go to extraordinary lengths for your work, madam.
I wonder, is what she just said particularly significant? This is on a new one? Now? Well, I mean, I guess this one too then, huh? Because it just updates it. It's not like the last one where we had this piece of information. No, it is. Because that was the last one. The statement changed depending upon what I said, so if I want to do anything with the fourth statement... Wait and see. Oh, sorry, I hit the wrong button. All it really told us is that sunrise in Great Britain is extremely early at the height of summer, I suppose. Thank you, madame. It's all clear now. How frustrating. I was not concentrating on Mr. Sholmes here, and I have taken away too much wax. Okay, so that's all I have to go on. What's your feeling, Mr. Naruhodo? For some reason, Dr. Scythe went along with Trevor's plan. Now, if that's really true, then the professor is the only other thing we know that links the pair of them. So I feel sure that waxwork must be a clue to this mystery somehow. In that case, we must use this cross-examination to uncover exactly what it means. Otherwise, the jurors are sure to revert their leanings and the trial will be over. I agree. But interestingly, uncovering what the professor has to do with all of this means more to Lord Van Zieks than anyone. That's the impression I'm getting, anyway. Yes, as do I. After all, he has a profound connection to the professor as well. Yeah. Session exhibit is based on rumor. Shock the society. Okay. The impression of their soldiers was taken the record from the corpse. Okay. I enlisted the aid of the grave digger and created a mold at the head of the cemetery. Okay. It took me a very long time because it was before the onset of rigor mortis. Right. So this was the statement that was significant somehow. Or that we believe is significant. Monday, June what? Because this is an old article, but what dated it? Because they said June 14th or something, right? We could see how long this guy showed up. Because if it was already dug up, and then this guy showed up... Because that's, that's the thing. If he's digging up the body and it was already dug up, then, like, were they there together? When did this article take place? June 17th, confirmed at midnight. And 4:40 was sunrise when she stopped. Rigor mortis set in at 3. And she said 10 hours? She said 10 hours. When it goes soft. So that's a contradiction right there. Do we present this? I guess so, huh?
Objection!
Madame Tuspels, I have here an autopsy report that was filed 10 years ago now. It confirms the death of the professor following his execution at the gallows. And is that a problem? I believe it is, because your testimony and a particular detail in the report completely contradict one another.
Are you going to explain yourself, my Nipponese friend?
According to her testimony, Madame Tuspels was creating her wax impression just before dawn, and at that time rigor mortis had not yet set in. Had not yet set in? I thought... Okay. Now I'm confused on the timeline on when she said she dug him up. Am I correct so far, Madame? You are, yes. As I said, the stiffening of the jaw is the first sign of rigor mortis 2 to 3 hours after death. But the man's chin was limp. Yeah, but you said it was relaxing. You didn't say it was limp, you said it was relaxing. And then Susato said it relaxes after about 10 hours. So now, the game is throwing me off. So he cannot have been dead for a long time. But on the other hand, if you look at Dr. Scythe's report, it quite clearly states the following. Death by hanging confirmed at midnight, 17th of June. No. If the professor indeed died at midnight that day, then by the time you were sculpting his face, rigor mortis would already have set in. Oui, yes, you are right. The chin, it would have been completely stiff. Which means it happened after, which means it was a real body in there, hiding, waiting, whatever, snuck out and scared Drebber with the mask on. In other words, this report is wrong. Okay, that too. That too. No coroner makes mistakes when recording the time of death. The very idea is absurd. In that case, there's only one possible conclusion. The execution didn't actually take place at the stated time. Impossible.
Order. Counsel, this is beyond folly. Not only do you indict the author of the report, Dr. Scythe, but you also implicate members of the staff at Barclay Prison where the execution took place.
Boy, heck.
Extraordinary.
Men, my day, I don't have your voice down anymore. My learned friend appears to have overlooked one very crucial fact. What fact? The professor died that night, without question. He did? Of course he did. I moved the man's limp jaw with my own hands. There was no... Yes, the professor died that night. But what if he didn't die at the gallows? Didn't die at... Are you insane? What exactly are you suggesting did happen in that case? It's almost impossible to believe, but it would explain the link. He was the man, he was hiding in the thing, he jumped out, he was shot dead. The body that we found at the site had a bullet hole in it, or blood in it. It was the body removed from the grave that... Wait a minute, though. It would have decomposed by now, surely. Was it the wax body? The wax body has a bullet hole in it? Didn't... Wait a minute. We talked about this before, when we were visiting the museum, right? Yeah? This was brought up before. That there should be a mark and that... Okay. It's almost impossible to believe, but it would explain the link between Dr. Scythe, the professor, and that one other person of interest. I have evidence that will explain exactly what I'm suggesting happened that night.
Counsel, present the evidence at once.
Do I?
The evidence that allegedly explains what really happened on the night of the professor's execution.
Well, okay, so... Okay. Yes, it was the professor rising from his grave. He was shot. This was the real guy. He was in the thing for some reason. It's gotta be this.
Take that!
Because that shot connects with the body. What happened that night is written very plainly in this newspaper article. Executed criminal returns in the dead of night at local cemetery. You're suggesting it was a corpse coming back from the dead now? Well, if this article is to be believed, yes. Then the professor, assumed dead following his execution, emerged from his grave and was killed again.
Objection!
Don't be a fool. That's simply a rumor, published by the gutter press. Can you be certain of that? Are you serious? The point is, as the article says, there was a witness to what happened.
My word, yes indeed.
There's a young man who stole into the cemetery by chance that night.
Objection!
Of course there was a witness. The story didn't write itself, but obviously the man made it all up.
And in any case, this was 10 years ago now. There would surely be no hope of finding him.
On the contrary, my lord, we all know this witness well. What?
Are you suggesting, Counsel, that you've identified the person in question? That you know who claims to have seen these utterly incredible events take place?
Yes, my lord. In fact, you could say he's right here before my very eyes.
You will substantiate your latest claim now, then, Counsel? Who is the alleged witness of this staggering scene from the cemetery 10 years ago?
Take that!
The man in question is Mr. Enoch Drebber. Drebber.
The previous witness?
A special exhibit in the House of Horrors at Madame Tuspel's Museum of Waxwork recreates that decade-old scene in great detail. The condemned criminal emerging from the grave, and beside the tomb, the young man with a lantern stumbling upon the terrifying sight. That young man is a 10-year younger Mr. Enoch Drebber.
Order! Surely not, Counsel.
Drebber was there, in Lowgate Cemetery. What is all this talk about Mr. Drebber? Is the name significant? Of course, Madame Tuspels doesn't know, does she? Yes, it's extremely significant, Madame. To your situation as well, in fact. What situation? The theft of the Professor Waxwork from your museum some days ago was perpetrated by the very same man. No. But that would mean... Madame Tuspels, it would appear you know the name, Enoch Drebber. Oui, yes, I know it. But from long ago in the past. What? Oh my.
Good gracious.
Explain yourself. Tell us everything you know. Okay, we might have to break this up, of course. Yes, of course. Okay, it's not new testimony. The story of a young man and the terrible sight he witnessed in the cemetery 10 years ago was published in every single newspaper in London and through Great Britain. However, in all of the articles, their witness was simply described as a certain young man. No details were published about his identity. His name was never revealed. That is apart from one newspaper, the Daily Circus. It is the paper from which comes the article I've already shown the court. Right, you're saying that his full name was only publicized in that article.
Goodness me, yes, here it is. The university student who experienced this shocking event is Mr. Enoch Drebber, a disciple of science at the University of London and a resident of its student dorms.
Unbelievable. When I read the article, I wanted to meet with the man. The discovery of the condemned criminal coming back to life in the cemetery at the dead of night would make a perfect exhibit for my House of Horrors, whether it was the truth or not. Sure.
I see. So you went to meet Mr. Drebber in order to sculpt a waxwork of the man, did you?
Is that a man? He was studying science at the University of London in those days. He was just a poor student. Yes, I'm sure he's still poor. I paid him £5 to model for the waxwork. And since that time, it has been in my museum to recreate a scene of terror from the cemetery. Sure. This is going on too long. We could have avoided all of this if we just cracked open the mask. So, 10 years ago, a young man appealed to the public about an extraordinary event he'd witnessed. A criminal who had been put to death re-emerging from his grave in the middle of the night. the public treated his claim as nothing more than an amusing anecdote that was soon forgotten. 10 years later, the same man steals a waxwork model of the executed criminal, ostensibly to use as a body double for the victim in the case we're discussing here today, even though the waxwork's build is a poor match for the victim, and its face is obscured by a mask. So the question is, why would the man do such a thing? Which brings us to 3 days ago, when the birdcage crashed into the Crystal Tower. If the birdcage had in fact contained not the body of Mr. Esmond, but that same waxwork, the coroner from Scotland Yard who investigated, Dr. Scythe, would have noticed immediately. And yet she submitted this autopsy report for the victim, which the court has seen earlier. Why? Because the waxwork was that of the professor, is that what you're saying? Dr. Scythe put her name to a document confirming the death of a condemned criminal who was still alive, a criminal whose apparent resurrection was witnessed by Mr. Drebber. But that misconduct was a deadly secret the coroner would do anything to protect, which is precisely why Mr. Drebber used that particular waxwork as the body double. My lord, this court must summon Dr. Scythe to the stand. The defense is determined to find out exactly how the coroner and Mr. Drebber are connected.
But according to the missive I received this morning through the prosecutor's office, Dr. Scythe is unable to participate in these proceedings. Is that not the case?
She told us so herself, didn't she? I'm still not sure what statute allows that, but Lord Van Zeeks wouldn't be summoning me as a witness. Lord Strongheart has forbidden it. Lord Strongheart. And the Pandora's box you were warned about is the Professor case. But please don't make the mistake of thinking you'll get any information about it out of me. Yes, okay. I remember. Something happened on the night of that killer's execution 10 years ago, and surely nobody would want to get to the bottom of that more than Lord Van Zeeks. The prosecution calls for the instructions in that missive to be scrapped.
But Lord Van Zeeks, the missive was issued from the Lord Chief Justice's office.
The assigned prosecutor has the final say on policy in any particular trial. In other words, me. Yes. Let Enoch Drebber and Dr. Scythe both take the stand together.
Order. Very well, I will uphold your request. Bailiff, send a subpoena with immediate effect addressed to Dr. Scythe of the Forensic Investigation Team. The woman is compelled to attend on Her Majesty's orders.
All right then, Enoch Drebber and Dr. Scythe. If they weren't colluding with one another, this crime could never have been committed. I'm just a stone's throw away. I can feel it. The truth behind all of this is about to come out. Alright, well, we'll just kind of put a pause on this. I like how the bench gets longer every time they add more witnesses. Thank you for your attendance at such short notice, Dr. Scythe. But we must take this break. I will see you next time.